And we do have you just read one thing here. We put this at the very beginning, and we have every senator.
Do I pronounce Ted with 2 D's the same as one with
I'm
one D?
This spell check is fired. Spell check is fired.
The senator put you on blast.
I so never do that.
I
Okay,
intended
you know what?
bud.
It's right here. It's right here.
Oh.
My
Oh,
assistant
man.
did that.
Maybe I should take over, Cyrus.
I think so. I'm so sorry.
We're just having fun. Tell me when you're ready.
Okay.
I'll say it.
All right, go ahead.
I'm Senator Ted Budd, and this is The Elephant in the Room.
Welcome to The Elephant in the Room. I'm your host, Cyrus Pearson.
And I'm your other host, Sophie Delquier.
That's 2 hosts for the price of 0 hosts. Absolutely free. Sophie, who do we have on today?
We had Senator Ted Budd of North Carolina, and what a fascinating person.
Really was.
Yeah.
Really was, yeah. I come off like a little bit of a fanboy, and I get way too excited about homeschooling. So if you want to hear that, here it is. So, Senator, you are from rural Davie, North Carolina, and I don't want to throw a curveball at you right off the bat, but have you heard of the Mocksville Masonic Picnic?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. That now, here's what impressed me about that. It's been going on since 1878.
You know, some of my high school teachers actually were there at the very first one.
Oh, wow.
I guess they perfected the deviled eggs and the food and drink placement by now.
They did.
So
Yeah, it was
what's
epic.
that like?
You know, I would just remember the chain swings and a lot of dangerous rides, and but it was a lot of fun, a lot of good food, and you know, when I went to Davie High School, we would, the football team, we would try to go over there. It was just a lot of fun celebrating Davie County and some good history.
When you look up the county, I mean, that's what it's known for, it says.
It is. I mean, it's so much more. You know, the population's grown to the east. A lot of folks from Winston coming out enjoying the joys of Davie County, the Yadkin River, Mocksville, points west. People from Charlotte, Statesville, figuring out they can live, a little less expensively and enjoy the culture of Davie County.
So we were talking about how rural it was, and Sophie had a question about
I did. Yeah. So it's obviously a rural county, and I think you grew up on a chicken and cattle farm.
I did.
And I'm curious about, how that was, and what did your parents do to put you to work? And I would say chores are not usually something that children are excited to do, but did you have...
Oh, I wasn't. No,
Yeah.
No, look, I was born in Winston-Salem, so Forsyth County, right next to that. And by the time we were 3 or 4 years old, my dad had bought a farm. I think he came home and told my mom what he had done, and then convinced her to
Surprise.
move out there. Right. She's more of
Wow.
a city girl. They just figured it out. And years later, almost 50 years later, we're out there on that family farm. It was a Tyson chicken farm for many, many years. That's come and gone, and now the chickens have names. It's not in the tens of thousands of chickens. It's just a handful. Still a Black Angus cattle farm. The chores back then, it was before we were big into the Tyson chickens. We were, you would gather eggs, and it wasn't row crop back then. It was mostly working the cows and just whatever they had me doing.
You've been hard working since a kid, and honestly, this hasn't happened before, so this may seem disjointed. There is so much to cover. I mean, you keep busy with so many different things. Did you want to start with something, Sophie, or did you want me to jump in here?
No, I mean, go ahead, jump in. I guess I did have one more
Go for it.
question. It's funny, everybody loves talking about dogs, and that was the first question that I had was, did you have working dogs? Or were they working, or was the farm working for them, chasing chickens and eating treats?
Yeah, so we love German Shepherds, which are not very compatible with chickens and rabbits, but we figured it out. Lost a few chickens to that, but my brother had a blue tick hound, so it was a true coon dog. That's a great sub story we'll go into another time. But that dog was actually lost for 8 months, and a neighbor happened to find him on the side of the road, barely alive, and
Wow.
nursed him back to health. But that was Blue, the blue tick hound.
Wow.
And he had a second life after he had been recovered and nursed back to health.
Was he ever
Wow.
the same afterwards?
Not quite. He was a little rickety afterwards.
Yeah, well, I mean, you got to
Yeah.
imagine you go
Yeah.
through something like that. That's to be expected. And what types of dogs do you have now?
We've got a golden retriever named Boone Boone. Daniel Boone lived on the Yadkin River where we live now. And also I went to school at App State, based in Boone, North Carolina.
Yeah, your education. Let's get into that in a little bit. Let's talk about something else tied to history. In North Carolina, flying out of Kitty Hawk, the Wright brothers did the first successful powered airplane in 1903, which was after the Mocksville Masonic Picnic, I believe.
Yes, it was.
120 years later now, you are a pilot yourself?
90 years after the Wright brothers, I soloed, and actually I got my private pilot license 30 years ago, so 1993.
What is the draw to flying?
You get to it's a sensory experience. You get to, see so much of the terrain, especially the mountains are not too far away. If you've ever watched the Andy Griffith show, Mount Pilot, as they called it in the show, but it's Pilot Mountain. It's about a 20-minute flight north from the farm. I fly off of a grass strip, and it's just great. You see so many people that they've never been up in a small plane. On a warm day, you get to fly with the doors open.
Wow.
You get to see the farms. You get to see the terrain. You can fly into Winston-Salem. It's just a great experience.
So I know you're very busy here in the Senate, but do you still fly often in North Carolina?
I try to every Sunday, if weather pending, every Sunday.
Wow.
Yeah.
Solo?
Or bring somebody with me. Yeah.
Very nice.
Now, I kind of have two questions here. You're really interesting. Your staff has given us a heads up. You've traveled quite a bit.
Oh no, they don't know if they told me what you're going to ask you.
You've traveled to all 50 states. Is that true?
We have, and we did that as a project. We figured out we were in about 30, 40, 35 states, and we were traveling. We homeschooled our 3 kids. They're now out of the house. They're off in college and graduating. One just graduated this past weekend. But we realized at about 35, hey, we're really intentional. We can do all of these. And so we ended up last year or two wrapping up all 50.
Did you fly to these or did you drive?
Some of both. Like we would fly maybe to the Northeast and then do states from there, or fly out to the Midwest and travel to the big boxy states. We just had a great time and tried to have all of us together.
So I know we haven't let you pitch North Carolina too much, but I have some questions based on that. Is there anything that stands out? What's one of your favorite states besides North Carolina? We're going to take that off the table.
Interestingly, whenever I see friends in the U.S. House or here in the Senate, and I talk to those that are from Michigan, I go, your state is the most overperforming state.
Really?
So if I'm not sure where you're from, I see you smiling over there. But, Michigan, I expected it to be like a giant Detroit. And it was rural. It was beautiful. There's some lakes. We were in the Upper Peninsula and really enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Wow.
But again,
It's so beautiful.
I can't let the podcast end at some point without me saying how much I love coming back home to North Carolina.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
we won't let it end without you talking a
Right on.
little more about it.
Thank you.
We know that you love North Carolina more than Michigan.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Now, let's talk about who you're bringing with you. How many kids do you have? Do you have a wife?
Yeah, Amy Kate and I have been married for 29 years. We met overseas on a mission trip. She went to Marshall University, and App State played Marshall at the time. And then we have 3 kids, 23, 21, and 18. So they're all out of the house. The 21-year-old just graduated. 23-year-old's about to wrap it up here at the end of the summer. So we'll have 2 out of college here pretty soon.
Wow. I want to go back to your wife and how you met on the mission trip. I heard something funny that sometimes people will ask you, well, how's her English? Because you met in the Soviet Union on a mission trip.
Yeah.
So tell me more about Amy Kate.
I say, hey, it's great. She's from West Virginia. You can tell Shelley Moore Capito I said that.
Yeah.
She, we were, she was at Marshall. I was at App State. It was the summer of '91, which is a really big summer. We both went over there, end of our freshman years of our college. And the Soviet Union was where Moscow, Leningrad, which was changing its name to St. Petersburg at the time. And then the second city of that was Kiev. And it was still part of the USSR. But you could feel the tensions even while we were there. We were only there about 12 days. Yeltsin was at the airport shaking hands, trying to gather support. So our group bumped into him over there.
Wow.
But then by the time we got home...
Boris Yeltsin,
Boris Yeltsin, right.
Yeah.
By the time that we turned on the TVs back home, it had started to collapse. The Iron Curtain was coming down. Now, Amy Kate had been, before I ever knew her, she was a Rotary exchange student to Belgium and got on a train in November of '89 and trained down to Berlin.
Oh, wow.
So she was at the Berlin Wall when it came down 2 years prior to the
I wish
Iron
she was
Curtain coming
here.
down. I know. So if you want regime change, send Amy Kate.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's an historic event to be next to.
And tell me a little bit more about one of your first dates. I heard that it was sandy and windy.
Where is that? Sandy and Wendy.
I think a motorcycle ride down the beach.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm
Yes.
taking you down memory
Yes.
lane here.
Well, we kept bumping into each other. We were part of a ministry now called Crew. It was called Campus Crusade back then. And I asked her to go out riding with motorcycles on the beach
I
in
love it.
Daytona. It was spring break, Daytona Beach. You can ride, cars. That's kind of where NASCAR got started, driving through the paved area and out onto the beach. But anyway, just took her for a ride out there and had a great day. And she kept going out with me.
That's great.
Eventually said yes a couple years later.
I mean, if she'll get on a motorcycle, sure.
That's right.
So it's clear that you both share faith. And
Yeah.
that's a big part of your life, and
Yeah.
it's a big part of your family. And you're very educated. You went to App State. You also have a master's in theology, which is very fascinating. It's one of the courses I regret not taking in college just because it's so interesting. Tell us a little bit more about your faith and your background and those values there.
Yeah, I think in college I was a business undergrad. She was a counseling major at Marshall, and I really just wanted a theological framework through which to process the world. I thought, I don't necessarily want to be in full time. Maybe I'd be in a ministry like Young Life or an outdoor camping ministry, like James Langford was at one point. I ended up being in the family business. But while I was at Dallas Theological Seminary, first of all, just living there, getting to meet great friends, getting to meet people from around the world, and understanding all 66 books of the Scripture in the original languages, it was grueling, and it was life-changing. And some of the most wonderful leaders you could ever imagine being around were the professors there. People that maybe listening to this have heard of Chuck Swindoll or Howard Hendricks or Tony Evans. Those were some of the people we would bump into frequently. Some were on the board, some were professors there, just amazing people.
Amazing.
How big a role has being a Christian been in your life?
It just permeates. I don't think it's a separate part of my life. It just permeates every single aspect.
It's who
or at
you
least
are.
it should. It's who I am. I'm very imperfectly, right? The goal is, you strive to be like Christ, and yet you use His power to do so through the power of the Spirit. And so that's kind of how you live it. And you want to be gracious to people. You want to hold the line on the issues that you believe as a Republican. But you come to these positions not just because you're a Republican, but because you believe it leads to human flourishing, and that's ultimately the goal.
I want to get back to some of the issues or get to the issues in a minute here. But like I said, there's just so much interesting about you that I'd like to talk about. So you had your kids.
Do you tell it to all your guests here? I'm just-
Well, if you'd have listened, you know. No, I'm kidding, Senator. I'm kidding. No, I don't say that, but I'll check the record. Maybe
That was
I do.
that was payback for your typo, Cyrus.
No, I'm truly interested. There's a lot going on here. Let's get into scouting. You are a father of not only an Eagle Scout, is that right?
That's right.
Which only about 2% of all scouts make that far. Sophie actually didn't know. I don't think it's not any secret. Don't know that much about scouting.
Don't put me on blast.
sorry,
My
I'm
stepbrother
sorry.
is in Boy Scouts,
Yes.
and my stepfather is. I don't know that he's one of the Scoutmaster's assistant or whatnot, but he does the camping trips. So I should know more about it, but I don't.
Oh, that's fine. And before I give you a chance, Senator, I do want to brag. I believe probably one of your daughters received the Stars and Stripes, a Christian scouting group, the American Heritage Girls.
She did, and that's the equivalent of an Eagle Scout.
That's incredible. 2 in one family.
That's great. I give Amy Kate the credit for that, and I get the privilege to be an assistant scoutmaster with Joshua, who's our oldest, and it's really served him well. It served me well to be a part of helping a lot of young men get across the line as Eagles. I've seen one that graduated this past weekend as a Navy SEAL. We're just seeing. We're just seeing a lot of great.
Well, let's talk
Congratulations.
about. Yeah, let's talk about scouting. There are some people who really don't know that much about it, or maybe they should be getting their kids into it. Tell us what you do as a scout.
There's a lot of outdoor activities. Our troop tried to camp every month, and so we were out there year-round,
cool.
warm or cold, rain or shine, leadership training. And of course, you walk through the modules. They try to earn their merit badges. We would have weekends, everything from auto mechanics to agriculture to welding. I mean, all sorts of things. And it really helps these kids be well-rounded. If they grew up in an urban environment, they may not know anything about agriculture, or if they grew up, they may need to understand some things about service in the city. And it really has the mindset of teaching you to be wanting to serve others.
I did a little scouting. You get a merit badge for each type of thing you cover. So how many badges does your son have then?
I don't know. There's you have the sash and a bunch sewn on there. I think a few were super glued there towards the end, maybe not sewn on.
Super glue badge.
Yeah, but it was impressive.
That's incredible. Now you're an outdoorsman too,
I try to be every chance I get.
and you hunt and fish.
I do, not nearly enough.
I mean, see, this is what I'm saying. You can't fly enough. You can't hunt and fish enough. You can't spend enough time back home.
We try to pack it in.
When
Yes.
did you, and you do, this is really impressive. And I don't say that to everybody, but it is really impressive. Can you tell us about when you learned to shoot?
There's not really a time in my life where I don't remember it. I just remember my dad, still living, very healthy. My parents are very blessed with great parents. But growing up on that farm, I remember him teaching me with a rifle, showing me the basics of safety, finger off the trigger, all the 3 or 4 rules of gun firearm safety. So that was just embedded in us early on. And, shooting tin cans and targets with a backstop. And it was great. And then later on, clay shooting. And I remember through Ducks Unlimited, we would do a lot of activities. Brought in, and there's actually his book out there. You can find it, I think, on Amazon. Lucky McDaniel came in and
Okay.
taught us to shoot, and he was a trick shooter and shooting instructor. This was back in the very early '80s, and I still remember some of the lessons. He would start with a metal plate, about as big as the bottom of a Coke can, and then he worked his way down to a quarter, and he would teach you with a Daisy Red Ryder BB gun, and he would eventually throw a quarter up in the air where you could hit it, and he was just teaching you the fundamentals. But I don't know if I could resurrect those skills or not. But it was fascinating as a 10 or 11-year-old to be taught, how to shoot and learn those fundamentals.
I think I've seen some of that on TV. Have you ever shot a coin out of the air?
At 10 or 12 years old, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, with Lucky McDaniel. But, I mean, you wouldn't hit it every time, but if you followed the fundamentals, you could do it.
I had the unfortunate job of being my brother's BB gun target. So wish he had a coin.
They used to call me Penny Pearson, but it's just because I didn't have much money. So couldn't really shoot anything. Now, you also, you have 3 degrees from 3 different colleges. You have a MBA, and you bought a gun store. Is that right?
Yeah, the MBA was from Wake Forest
Okay.
University, a lot of our family. And I would say Wake Forest is the reason I'm a North Carolinian. My uncle, my dad's oldest brother, was recruited by Wake Forest when they had moved. When Wake Forest moved from the town of Wake Forest, so be careful if you punch it in your GPS. Are you going to look at Wake Forest, the city, or Wake Forest, the college? Wake Forest University is in Winston-Salem. So when they moved in 1956, they recruited my uncle to play basketball. He did. His younger brother, my dad, followed him down and stayed in North Carolina. So that's why I'm a North Carolinian. That uncle would later go on and play for the New York Knicks.
Wow.
After
Wow.
Wake Forest, Dave Budd, he's still living. He's in New Jersey right now, stayed up there. My dad was, from 1961 on, was 10 years before I was born, was a North Carolinian. But Dave became very famous one night playing Wilt Chamberlain the night that Wilt scored 100 points.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
Well, that is something to brag about. I mean, he
I
wasn't
brag
involved in
about
the
getting
game.
beat really badly, but everybody was getting beat really badly.
So you took your business degree and you bought this. If I have this right, this was kind of a failing gun store. Is that right?
I don't know who goes out of business or goes bankrupt in a gun range under Obama, but this guy did. And so we, with a partner that had been in the SWAT team in the police department in Winston-Salem, we ended up acquiring it with a goal of having one customer, and that would be the local police department. And they encouraged me. I'll never forget what the training captain told me. He said, never underestimate the need of the public to have a safe place to shoot. So I verified. I said, do you really want me to open this to the public? He said, absolutely. And so we have very safety-minded, very compliance-oriented. At first it was just a range and then expanded the retail side as well, plus training, plus gunsmithing.
So what's the reception like? I mean, how much has this turned around?
It's been phenomenal. The team, first of all, I want to give credit to the team. They do a great job. And again, they work well together. They understand the ins and outs of the books and the compliance, and they really want to make people who aren't familiar with firearms. And there's a lot of people on the out. You want to not be cliquish. You want to say this is how you get from not understanding anything to how you understand how to safely shoot a firearm. And a lot of people come in, they'll maybe have received one as a gift. They said, hey, Mom, this is for you for protection. They bring it in kind of like they're carrying a dirty diaper, with
Yeah.
2 fingers. They says, I don't know anything about this. And then we show them how to use it. We show them how to safely shoot, and they end up finding a new sport, something they really enjoy. And there's a social aspect to it as well, and part of the community. And that's the goal. That's kind of the motto of the store, is to helping our community responsibly enjoy firearms.
That's really wonderful. And you still do the local police trainings there too, is that right?
You know, they have their own range, and we knew that they were going to build their own. But
Oh, great.
A lot of folks that if they're preparing for police qualification, basic law enforcement training, they'll come and they'll warm up, or they'll get some remedial training with us before they go in and do their final test.
That's fantastic.
Do you think firearms are misunderstood? Because I know whenever, you're posted somewhere, it's going to be, oh, guns are so terrible and this guy is so evil, this type of thing. Do you think guns are misunderstood? I mean, you just said how people come in and then they discover such a social thing and they learn the right way to use these.
Well, you think about how people that are opposing, how do they learn about it? One is maybe they had a traumatic incident, or somebody was misusing it in their life, a relative, or somebody was irresponsible, or they're probably programmed by social media and television. And what do they see? It's usually the bad guy, and it's a lot of bad habits taught on via Hollywood on television.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you come in, you learn it the right way. You learn, less 1 shot per second. You learn all the safety training along with it, and you become a responsible user. I guess a rule for many things in life is you're not up on what you're down on, or you're down on what you're not up on. If you're not up to speed on it, you're probably opposed to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely true with firearm, especially when the media is constantly pounding and they're blaming the firearm. And what we don't have is a device problem in this country. What we have is a people problem. People, it's criminal or mentally ill, with people that shouldn't have firearms. And you want to keep them out of the hands of dangerous individuals, bottom line.
That's absolutely right.
Parallel to that, was this your first business that you had?
No, apart from the farm, I grew up, and I don't take credit for this, but I did grow up in a family business, which is still going today. I haven't been involved in this business for 20 years, but janitorial, landscaping. At the time, it was unarmed security guards, and this is a business that my dad had grown from a mop bucket in the 60s when he stayed in North Carolina up until now, when that business just celebrated I think last week just celebrated its 60th anniversary. So
Wow.
I grew up mopping floors, mowing grass.
I mean, hardworking listeners, did I not say?
Yeah.
That's
It's
incredible.
amazing.
So,
No favorite chore though.
No favorite.
I don't
There
do it
never
all.
is.
Yeah, anything with a motor on it. I did like mowing hay and.
You have to fix the
bush hogging.
lawnmower?
Oh, absolutely. Usually because I broke it. But got to be a pretty good mechanic, but usually because I would break things.
But I have heard that you have a knack for that, and that you're interested a little bit in the engineering aspect of anything that has an engine, right? Like the
Absolutely.
planes and tractors.
Race cars, everything.
Yeah.
Have you rebuilt old cars?
I did. Yeah.
What did you do?
Yeah, I found it's a barn find, and
Oh, those are good.
yeah, this was great. So somebody said there was an old GTO. I knew mostly the Chevrolets, and I didn't know the Pontiacs that well. And I knew there was something called a Ferrari GTO. I said, well, maybe there's a Ferrari in a barn, and maybe this guy didn't know what he's got, and I could buy it from him as a 15-year-old kid. And it was not. It was it was a Pontiac GTO.
Don't be disappointed. When I was a
yeah.
kid, I had a Pontiac up on my wall, and I said, one day I'm going to get a Pontiac.
My pickup truck as a 15, 16-year-old, you could see through it because it was so rusty. And, the sad story, I said, Dad, no girl's ever going to date me if I'm driving this truck. He said, son, if a girl won't date you because of that truck, you don't need to be dating her.
I love it.
It's the
I
smart
love it.
advice, and Amy Kate did ride in the truck, and she approved.
Oh, it's great.
Wow.
But I did find that GTO is a 1966 convertible GTO. It had the wrong paint, wrong top, wrong interior, wrong engine, and we hauled it out on a rainy day in the late 80s and pulled it from that barn to our barn, 10, 20 miles away, and began fixing it up over a series of years.
So do you still have it to this day?
I had it for 15 years, and it was a great vehicle, and eventually just sold it.
It gave out.
Yeah. No, it didn't give out. No, I sold it, and for a while there, saw it driving around.
Oh, wow.
Who knows where it is now?
That's great.
Let's talk about, like I said, there is just so much here. Let's talk about homeschooling. You did that with your kids?
I'm going to give Amy Kate the credit there
Okay.
because she might listen to this.
I don't see any chinks in the armor with her. It sounds
are
incredible. So actually, I think a lot of people the first thing they think about when they think about homeschooling is there's going to be a lack of that the social aspect isn't going to be there. But I've been reading up on it, and actually I really got deep into it. That's not true, is it?
Well, read social media, right? Scroll through your feed, pull up the papers, watch the news. Is that how you want your kids to be socialized? So yeah, they're going to get socialized. So what do you want? for these kids. Look, there's so many tools out there. And mostly if homeschooling, if it's done right, it's done in community with other folks. Like the scouts, a lot of the folks from the scout group, some were from the public school, and there's always a mix. They would see each other there. There's lots of social activities, but I would say it's guided by the parents with intentionality, and that's the goal. But there's so many tools out there for people who feel like it might be overwhelming, but these tools make it a lot easier on the moms and dads and parents and guardians that want to raise these kids.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. I saw one statistic, 98% of homeschooled students take part in at least 5 extracurricular activities away from home, which is probably
That's
more
great.
than my kids who are at public school are doing.
Yeah, and look, I don't. Parents have to decide what's best for them, and
Sure.
But I think it's a great option. I think a lot of folks should consider it, and it gave us a lot of freedom. Like a lot of this travel, we were incorporating these 50 states. I mean, Amy Kate would always weave a lesson in, national state history. Would always build that into the travels.
That's great.
Well, I'm not trying to sell anybody on this, but it was so interesting to me that I found out all these
Cyrus is
statistics.
sold.
I mean, I'm into it. This was interesting to me. Taxpayers spend an average of about $15,000 per pupil annually, and the roughly 3.7 million homeschool students of 2020 to 21, represented a savings of over $56 billion for taxpayers that the American taxpayers did not have to spend. And homeschool families spend an average of $600 per student annually on
Wow.
average. I mean, that's incredible.
Wow, didn't know those numbers.
Good for
That's
the
impressive.
economy as well,
Yeah,
then.
it's great.
All right, well, I'll get off this topic. The last thing, 69% of peer-reviewed studies on success into adulthood, including college, shows adults who were home educated succeed and perform statistically significantly better than those who attend institutional schools. So I just want to say that's incredible.
Well, and I think to your point, like spending more time with family, I think that's something these days that is really hard, just especially with social media. And, they joke about tablet kids or iPad screen kids. It's hard to have quality time with your kids with so many distractions in the modern world. And I think that homeschooling, if a good option, for you and your family, it kind of makes sense, right? The more time you have with your kids, the more successful they might be. So it worked out well for you and your children.
It worked out great. Very proud of where they're headed and what they're doing. But, if you look at the history of it, in the early 1980s until 1982, it was illegal in North Carolina. So that was actually a legal fight, 40-some years ago. And you could have gone to jail had you tried to not take your kids to either private church or public school, had you tried to do it at home.
I didn't realize that
So
at
that's
all.
new. And then if you go back earlier than that, it was really a liberal movement who were trying to fight back against the man and the system, and so it was actually more of a kind of almost a hippie movement early on, and then now it's thought of as more conservative, but it's ebbed and flowed ideologically over the years. But the mechanism of homeschooling is it's phenomenal.
And North Carolina is the #1 state with the most amount of students homeschooled at this point.
Oh, great.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
So let's talk about you coming up here. You were so busy. I mean, obviously you had a lot going on. You have a lot to keep you occupied. Why did you decide to serve the state of North Carolina?
Well, I would say it really started in 2016. And I thought, one day, look, I love business, love being close to home, that one day, kids out of the house, that I would perhaps run for office or, help some others. And I'd helped on some campaigns and volunteered before and been to, fundraisers. So I kind of got it from outside looking in. But really an opportunity happened where they redrew, and our state's redrawing itself every week or two for the congressional. And they opened, there was a seat, it had 5 counties. It was an R5, R6 district, right around Winston-Salem. And I decided to run. Somebody said, there's going to be 4, maybe 5 people in a primary you can run. It'll be easy, no problem. And so I signed up. This was Good Friday of 2016. I looked at the primary the next day, that Saturday before Easter. 17 people had signed
you
up.
believe that?
Republicans, 5 Dem. So 22
Wow.
people in the race. I was like, oh my word. And I figured I would just, quit, go back to work, forget about it. Maybe I'll try it again in a decade. And eventually just the team started coming together, meeting the right people to say, you need to meet this person. And it just worked out where we won significantly in the primary, then on to the general. So just that dedication to public service. This is an outflow of public service. There's many, many ways to serve others, whether it's through scouting, whether it's through American Heritage Girls, or in other ways in your community. And this is, for now, this is my season and my avenue of serving others.
Well, that kind of brings me to my next question. You have so many deep personal values, whether it be your family, your faith, of course, and I know that you're a big advocate of America First policies. What about your personal values do you bring to work with you in the Senate?
Yeah, I think something I mentioned earlier, Sophie, and that is human flourishing and building a stronger nation. Look, traveling around the world, meeting with world leaders, talking with those our service members overseas, they're fighting. Those who are upset, rightfully so, about Afghanistan and our veterans. But we got to make sure that we're a nation worth fighting for. Yes, we want a strong defense, but you also got to have a core reason inside that's worth defending. And so we have to be strong, not just fiscally, but we have to be strong with our values. We have to be strong family. We have to be, very careful about the stuff we're putting in our bodies. I'm concerned about the fentanyl. It's killed over 104,000 people last year. This is absolutely devastating. And so we have to be strong internally so that we're worth fighting for externally. And so those are the values that I'm fighting for here and what keeps me going.
We're thankful.
Thank you.
I think your staff gave us about a half hour, and we're about there, but I do want to touch on 3 quick things, if I could, real quick. The first bill, you were in the House for a while. You came over to the Senate. You introduced the Build the Wall Now Act. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I've been to the wall multiple times. I've seen the concrete. I've seen the steel. I've seen the yellow diesel equipment just sitting there that's been idle since January 20th of 2021 when Joe Biden was in office. And then you see, heartbreaking people are coming across the border. And it's an unforced error on the part of the Biden administration, verging on evil. You think they always talk about women and children. We're actually the ones that do things for women and children because those that are coming across the border, a third of them are sexually exploited en route to the U.S. Children are being dumped on this side of the fence. It's horrible. So the Build the Wall Now Act takes about $2.1 billion of already appropriated money, so you don't have to spend anymore. It's already there. It just needs to be unlocked and put to use. Biden administration has put in every obstacle they could, whether it's environmental or this or that, to stop construction. So this kind of bypasses all of those things. It says, let's just build the wall, and let's use the money that's already been appropriated.
Yeah, recently got word 5 million crossings.
Yeah,
it's shocking.
That's epic.
It's really shocking.
Epic.
Yeah, and I think
that's half of North Carolina's population.
Right. And to your point, going back to fentanyl, I think this has really surpassed it being a border state issue, right? We have, parents out there who have lost their children tragically. People have lost their parents from this.
Sophie, we're all 1 or 2 degrees away from it. We've got names that we can think of.
Yeah.
We've been to funerals. When I went to all 100 counties in North Carolina back during the campaign, many of those counties multiple times, sheriffs would come up to me in many of those counties. They would say, every single county is now a border county because of Joe Biden's policies. It's true, and it's heartbreaking. This is an unforced error. We know how to fix it. And this is not all of the solution, this Build the Wall Now Act, but it's a large part of the solution.
Okay, so that's one of the things you're working on, and let me turn this in a little bit of a different direction here. I watched when you won election night. Tom Tillis introduced you. You talked about a family motto you had, and I believe that has to do with what you promised people here. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that comes from my grandfather, who passed away before I was born, many years before. But he said, just do what you say you're going to do. And my brother uses it in his business. I use it here, but it's just a truism. I'm sure it's not exclusive to us, but just do what you say you're going to do.
That's awesome. Awesome
Yeah,
way
it's
to
very
live life.
it's very honorable, and there's not many people who do what they're.
if they do, you can trust them.
Yeah.
Super incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, I said we wouldn't leave without you bragging about North Carolina, so let me give you a chance before we go.
I love, CNBC said it right. They said it's the best state in the country to do business in. I happen to live there, born there, raised my family there. Don't ever want to leave. And it is just, I'm biased. It's the best state in the union, but I meet a lot of other great folks from great states around the country. we love doing business there. And we got the mountains, we got the coast, we got great universities, we've got great technology, and great interstates, and the largest industry, it's agriculture. You think it might be the high rise, it might be banking. That's huge in North Carolina. But again, so much technology, so much engineering, and so many companies moving there. They've figured it out. And you hear, you say, well, what about all these people moving in? Is it going to change us politically? Well, maybe. But in a room that had hardly any North Carolina accents, I was hearing only northern accents. I was like, oh my goodness. But it was as red as could be. It was Republican. People had fled these liberal states like New York and Massachusetts and found a great haven in North Carolina, and we welcome them there.
For those looking to visit, sorry staff, what's a great time if they want to get a taste of North Carolina? What's a good month to go?
Well, there's winter, spring, summer, fall.
You've got it
I'm
all
just thinking, you can win whether it's the mountains, any of those seasons, or down at the coast, or anywhere in between.
Any final thoughts, Senator?
We've got great barbecue, and whether it's
I
Western.
wanted to talk. I love barbecue.
I'm sorry we didn't have time for barbecue. Western or Eastern. It's not. I wouldn't say Western. I should say Lexington style barbecue, which is from the West, but it's Lexington style, and then Eastern. And while I grew up in Lexington, I represented the town of Lexington in Davidson County, and I'm a little partial there, but I learned to love Eastern as well.
Reason enough for me.
So next time you come in, we'll have to do a barbecue tasting.
Ooh.
Maybe over lunch.
No blindfolds, please. But let's do
it.
Senator, I hope you believe me when I say this. You are super interesting. I wish we had more time, and I really enjoyed our conversation today, so thank you.
Well, Cyrus, Sophie, thank you all for having me, and it's been great to be with y'all.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We had a lot of fun with Senator Budd. We have some great senators coming on soon.
And if you'd like to hear those senators coming up, please hit the subscribe button now so you're notified by your preferred app. The Elephant in the Room is brought to you under the direction of U.S. Senator John Barrasso of Wyoming, and we couldn't do it without the help of Arjun Modi, Carly Rapp, and Elena Seiler. Thank you for listening, and until next time, this is
The Elephant in the Room.